Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. I am Kelly, and my friend is James. What's up, dude?
What's up, Special K?
Not a lot. I know this is your special day. This is all about you today. This is you and your thing, your jam we're playing today, my friend.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're
So
gonna have.
Wait. Before we do all that, just wait. Let me tee you up. Let me tee you up because this is probably the last time you hear from me in this podcast. So let me just tee this up because this is all about you. We are speaking to a Bigfoot dude who actually, I shouldn't call him that. James is going to get more specific, but this guy is a Bigfoot investigator. For those of you that don't know, Bigfoot is James's jam. That is his thing. And so, James, tell us all about this investigator, and then we'll get right into it.
All right, so we're going to bring on Jason Kenzie. He is a wildlife photographer and a Bigfoot investigator. And I thought it was interesting because I thought since he had experience photographing animals, he would know what an animal looked like on film. So if he filmed Bigfoot or photographed it, he would know if it was an animal at least. So I was really excited to have him on. He has a documentary called Search for Sasquatch, which I recommend highly. He's also going to do a chapter 2, and he'll talk about that. And if you're ready, my friend, let's bring him on.
Okay, so welcome to the podcast. Wildlife photographer and Bigfoot investigator, Jason Kenzie. Jason, thank you so much for being on That Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. We are excited because of your deal with Bigfoot, and James is a Bigfoot aficionado. That is his jam.
I'm excited.
He loves Bigfoot, so he is probably way more excited than I am. Not that I'm not a Bigfoot whatever, but it is his thing. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Jason, for coming on. I am really excited about this. I was interested in Bigfoot since I was a kid, and then when you contacted us and we saw that you had your documentary, I'm like, we have to get him on. I'm really interested on how you started this. After I watched your documentary, I'm sorry, I'm too excited. Sorry, dude, I'll calm down.
Breathe. Take a deep breath.
Sorry, I'm hyperventilating.
Take a deep breath.
In your documentary, you said you're not a believer, right?
Yes, I'm a skeptic, an open-minded skeptic.
Yeah, and that's good because, we don't want to have someone, come out that's biased so much, without looking at some evidence, or something. So my question is, short of a body, what would you consider evidence that would make you a believer?
Okay, so first off, I really do want Sasquatch to be real. Okay, I really do. I would love it if there was, thousands of these creatures living in our forests. With that said, I call it the 3 things that you need to do for people to believe that you have a real Sasquatch on your video camera. If you can't shoot it, right? Like if you don't have a gun, you can't shoot it. And if you see a Sasquatch and it walked out in front of you and you can film it, instead of just screaming like a little girl and running away, if you can hold yourself for a second, after you pooped yourself, because, I would be scared. But if you can hold the camera on it as it's walking away, because I do believe that Sasquatches are, if they're real, will leave the area fast. I don't think they really want to interact with humans, so to speak. So when it walks off, if you can go into the area without turning your camera off and film the height of the trees around it, and if you have any footprints on the ground, if you're able to film the footprints without turning your camera off and maybe getting some footprint casts, with that combination of footage and footprints and the trees, if you can show that to people, the raw footage, people will believe that Sasquatch is real. But what's happening is, you know, people see Sasquatch and all the footage you see is for like 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then it cuts, right? You never see like, oh, look, we found footprints, but let's see the footage before it and after, right? Instead of, you know, instead of just all these cuts. And, you know, there's been a few Sasquatch hunters out there who have amazing footage, up close, you know, almost 4K footage of Sasquatch's heads. I'm not going to say who it is, but ironically, all their footage has disappeared before and after, which is very, very, how do I say, you know, strange. That you can't...
and I think I know who you're talking about. He's pretty controversial. I'll call it out. Todd Standing is the one I'm thinking of, and he has, and that's interesting because you're a photographer also, and I'm not sure if you've seen any of his videos, but are his videos from a photography standpoint questionable?
Well, there would have to be a lot of work that goes into making his videos and his photography. Like what I have seen of his, if it's hoaxed, there was a lot of work to go into it. There has to be other people that were there to help along. I mean, some of the stuff, you know, the footage of the alleged Sasquatch behind the tree, right? That had its back to him. I mean, if you look, you can see it's quite big, quite tall. So it would take a lot of work, more than just one person to set that up, right? If it's a dummy in a tree, like if it's a dummy, it would take a lot of work to put that up there. It wasn't like a balloon, right? But like I said, is for one thing, if you know anything about animals, a lot of times animals will not turn their back on anything. Like animals, like predator animals, you know, they will not turn their back on something that they think might harm them. It just doesn't happen. You know, if you're hiding from something, and your back is to it, you're behind a tree or a bush and your back is covered by the tree. You're not going to just stand there in the open with your back to whatever, right? Because you're vulnerable, right? So that was kind of, and you know, the tree falling and, you know, allegedly knocking or not falling, but allegedly another Sasquatch put a tree and landed on his back. He falls over and the camera goes out in the soft snow, right? Like the camera just, you know, clicks off, ironically. Of course, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure if a 400-pound, you know, tree falls on you, pretty much you're gonna right? Or you're gonna have a concussion and you're not gonna be getting up, right? So it's just a lot of stuff that just doesn't make sense. Not saying it's not real, not saying it's fake, but those are just my opinions.
And that's right, and it's interesting because, you know, I've talked to Kelly about this. You know, sometimes I see some of his things and it looks incredibly realistic, and then other times you see things and you're like, well, that's kind of questionable. So it really is, you know, confusing. What is your take on the Patterson-Gimlin video?
Well, that's interesting too, because the fact that the person who took the video was literally going out there to find Sasquatch, right? You know, and then ironically he finds Sasquatch. How long have you been searching for Sasquatch?
Well, that's the thing. I've never been in the field, you know, so I admire you. And And, you know, and that's, you know, but that's like saying if you go out and you find Sasquatch and you video it and you bring it back, you know, I find it hard to question you found what you were looking for and you videoed it. I mean, I'm not saying that makes that authentic, but I think sometimes people say that in arguments, like, well, they're looking for it, and so if they find it, you can't be surprised.
Yeah. So, okay, so there's a little bit more to that too, right? I guess I cut myself off. But yeah, so the guy that was looking for it, he is searching for Sasquatch and finds him. But also, if you look at the background of the guy behind the video camera, right? You know, a lot of his friends, and if you've seen interviews, you've seen all the interviews I've seen of his friends talking about how he's a little bit seedy and he's a little bit, you know, he really wanted to, you know, have an experience. You know, his life wasn't, you know, the best at the time, right? Like you know, he was financially strapped, and, you know, there was a lot of stuff that was going on. And then, you know, the Sasquatch video put him back on the map and, you know, made him a very wealthy person. And, you know, there was a lot of people that loved him and a lot of people that hated him. You know, I mean, I know as much about that film as, let's say, you, right? So these are only my opinion. I could be completely wrong, you know. But you're right. I could go out and I film a Sasquatch and I bring it back, you know, everyone's going to be like, oh, he's faking it, right? He's not a real Sasquatch. But that's why you need to do at least 3 things. Like, as scared as I will be, if I see a Sasquatch that walks out in front of me, I mean, I want to go towards it to make sure it's not a guy in a suit. You know, I want to make sure it's not someone that's, you know, scamming me, right? So when I'm walking out to it, you know, if it turns out to be a real Sasquatch, well, it was very nice meeting you.
Great, yeah. So how many field investigations have you done now?
Quite a few. I've done, like, I finished chapter 2, The Watchers. So I've done probably 8, 9 investigations. You know, I'm interviewing people all the time. I have a few next week. And I like going into the field. Like, I love going into the forest. As scary as it can be, you know, when you're out alone at night, sometimes it can be quite scary, right? Because your imagination you know, takes control, and the littlest tiny, you know, chipmunk can feel like a dying grizzly bear, right? Especially when you're out there looking for a creature that is 9 feet tall. Yeah, it can be a little scary. And I admit, I do get scared all the time.
You get scared all the time, but you still go out there.
Yes.
Wow. I don't think I could do that.
What was the scariest situation you've ever been in?
Well, you know, there was quite a few times, either in the tent and something's walking around. I don't know how many times I've had it where a bear has come out. Either black bear or grizzlies come out and stuck their nose right against the tent. One time I had something come and sit right on the tent, like right next to the tent, and it kind of pushed me over a little bit. Like, it pushed me to the side, and it sat down, and I just elbowed it, and it just ran off into the forest. You know, but yeah, those are pretty scary. When you hear the screams and the howls in the forest, that can be pretty scary too. I don't know if you've ever heard a bobcat or a cougar screaming in the forest. I mean,
I used to go camping when I was younger, so I know some of the sounds. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, you're out there looking for a giant monster covered in hair that could easily just walk up and twist your head off, and they'll be done. And then you hear these screams, and now you have to, okay, is that a bobcat? Is that a cougar? Or, you know, or could it be a Sasquatch? Right? All in a split second. You know, and sometimes you'll get mistaken because you're so focused on, you know, finding Sasquatch that you kind of forget that there's other animals in the forest that could easily take you out.
Right. Have you ever heard anything that was not, what you would think a cougar or an elk would sound like?
Yeah, I've heard screams in the night that I knew wasn't coyotes, and I knew it wasn't an owl. It was a toss-up between a cougar or a bobcat, but I didn't see any signs of any wildcats in the area. Of course, I didn't see any signs of any Sasquatch either. So, but I've seen the structures out there that's been made. I've seen footprints, like in the documentary when I came to that lake and found hundreds of those. I mean, up close you could see that it looked like something was walking. I wish if the water wasn't, ice cold and I wasn't such a wimp that I would have waded in a little bit to get a closer look.
And
but,
what I found was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I said what I found was interesting when you had the drone go over the lake, and you could see the footprints, along the bottom in there.
Yeah,
and
you could.
It seems like if it were elk or something like that, there would be more or something. I thought it was interesting when you used the drone.
Yeah, well, if it was a moose, and it may have been a moose, but usually moose they tear it up, like they just tear it up as they're walking. So I believe that when those footprints were made, either it was extremely muddy at the time, like the lake was very low, maybe a little bit dried up a tiny bit, because you've waded in water. If you're trying to walk in water, you're not, you're crushing everything up as you're walking. Right? You're sloppy, you're staggering. I mean, who knows? But somebody's going to go back up there and they're going to do a little bit more investigation of those footprints, because my Sasquatch documentary has at least stirred that up. So there'll be other people, other Sasquatch hunters and investigations that will go up and they'll check it out, find out exactly what it could be.
Wow, I'm interested. They do that environmental DNA. Mm-hmm. They might be able to do it there. Well, I'm not sure how long it is effective, but something like that they could use up there.
Yeah, you can also find plaster that you can put in the underwater plaster.
Oh, and you can take a cast of it, yeah. Yeah,
you can actually pour it in there and it will set underwater.
Kelly, I feel like I'm dominating this interview. You got any questions?
Why? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The question that I would have for you is, you say that you're a skeptic. You've gone out and you've done these investigations and you keep doing the investigations. So are you more leaning toward there is something out there? Because I would imagine by now, if you were like a complete, I don't believe it, you wouldn't continue to go out there. You believe there is something out there.
I do believe there is something out there that people are seeing. But I need a Sasquatch to come walking out of the forest and slap me in the face before I can believe 100%. The reason why I'm still investigating is my entire life I have hiked and camped and been in the forest so much that, now to go out there and, kind of search for this giant creatures, it's exciting, right? I'm going out there hiking and camping anyway, and I love it, right? I do all the fishing and the hiking, the backcountry camping. And so my other life that I have is I'm an extreme pet photographer, an extreme animal photographer. So for 25 years, I've traveled around the world meeting people that live with the most amazing animals, like kangaroos, bears, alligators, wolves, chickens, you name it, monkeys, no cages. I have to be able to hug the animals, so to speak, right? So I love meeting people, and I love hearing their stories about the animals they live with. So to go and interview people who have these experiences with a giant hairy creature 9 to 10 feet tall living in these forests, it's a no-brainer. I love hearing the stories anyway. So to go and interview these people, and are they telling me the truth? I don't know. I hope so. They may not be, but that's not for me to judge. It's for me to interview them and to get their story. If they're lying, well, they're lying. If they're lying, they're lying. If they're telling the truth, they're telling the truth. And at least I can get it on film and have them talking about what happened to them. I don't judge, right? You know, they had an experience, and I just like to document it and get to go on these adventures.
Are you working on? You said you're working on the second documentary now, or is it finished, or are you currently?
No, the second one is completely done. It's sitting next to my computer, waiting to launch, which will be in July. And I'm working on chapter 3 at the moment. So chapter 2 is really cool. It's almost better than the first one. I interview an ex-law enforcement officer who she says had an encounter with seeing a UFO, and then as soon as she saw the UFO, there was 2 Sasquatches. So she tells the story about what happened. I had to beg her to tell me her story. She didn't want to, and I said, look, I will black you out. I will change your voice. Please, please, please let me hear your story and record it. And finally she did. I also interviewed a lady by the name of Carol, and she is a medium, and she's a channeler. So she channels this God being named Pax, you know, the almighty Pax God. And she, this God being writes through her these books. She writes these books. She has a lot of followers. She has lots of people that believe her. And I asked her if she can ask Pax what Sasquatches are. And she told me. She wrote down on a piece of paper what Pax told her what Sasquatches were. And I'm behind the camera listening to her talk about, you know, what Sasquatches are through this God being. And I'm like, God, this is real. This could change everything we ever thought we knew about, you know, human civilization, you know, the human nature. You know, it was just crazy what she was telling me. And I couldn't believe that I was getting it on film. So that's in chapter 2. And then going into the forest and doing the adventure bit was great because I had a thermal camera, one of the ones that plug into the cell phone. It was a 4K thermal camera, and I'm filming in the forest. I could hear footprints, something walking through the snow. Couldn't see anything. You know, I couldn't see anything, and I'm shooting like 200 feet into the forest. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's snow falling from the tree, which could be possible, right? You know? And when I was looking at the footage later, the whole screen was yellow. And I'm thinking to myself, well, there has to be something. There has to be, you know, anything red would be hot. And I could see on the thermal a very slight red, and it was moving back and forth on the screen. And I'm thinking they're moving back and forth like normally, like just in one speed. I'm thinking, well, maybe this is broken. And then all of a sudden, one of the, whatever it was, moved across the screen really slowly, and it's like it saw something and got scared and went the other direction really fast. And I'm like, oh, okay, that was weird. So I put the raw footage of that in chapter 2 at the end for everyone to see, right? Because people can tell me what they think it could be. I'm not sure what it was, 100%. But like I said, I could hear something walking through the snow. Couldn't see anything. And my camera person was like, we better go. Let's go. I'm like, no, just a second. Let's go. I'm like, no, don't worry. Yeah, it was great. Great. You guys are going to enjoy it.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to it. I am.
Nice. Jason, thank you so much for being with us today to talk about the documentary. Tell us the name of it, please, again.
It's called Searching for Sasquatch, Chapter 2, The Watchers.
And where is it available?
Well, it's going to be launched, and it's going to be on some of the streaming platforms. I'm not putting it on YouTube this time. I'm going to be putting it on these streaming platforms. Plex is one of them. Tubi TV will be another one. But if anyone wants to check out my animal adventures on YouTube, they can go to A Photo Warrior on YouTube. Yeah, that's going to be great. I'm going to be going to some of the Bigfoot festivals, which are going to be in July, and that's going to be exciting. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my Sasquatch adventures, and hopefully we find Sasquatch. Maybe I already have. You'll have to watch and find out.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm excited.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I admit, I was a little giddy at the beginning, and I'm still a little giddy now, because, like you say, this is my thing. I get into it. I thought it was interesting. He said he was a skeptic, yet he still goes out investigating. And you asked him about that. And like you said, there has to be a kernel of, hope, or it's real or something, or you're not going to be going out there.
Well, that's my thing. That's why I was asking him. Obviously, there's something out there to keep making you go back out there, right? There's something, you're hearing something, you're filming something, whatever. What did he say? His 8th or 9th investigation?
Right? And he's up in BC, and that's pretty thick forest up there and stuff, when you watch the documentary, they're out there a ways. And so it makes you wonder. I thought it was interesting when he said when he was filming the next one, he could hear something walking in the snow. And I don't know if our listeners are familiar, when snow falls from a tree, when it has too much snow and it falls, you hear that kind of woof, But what happens is snow falls from a tree, maybe get one or two, but then if you string several together, like I'm talking, like we always say, more than once is not a coincidence. I'm not saying it was, but it's something to think about.
Well, he did say that chapter 2 drops this month, July, if it hasn't already. He did say that it would be on Tubi TV, which, by the way, shouts out to Tubi. That is my new favorite streaming app because it's got movies on there, and even though they're uncut, but there's commercials, but I don't mind that. So just shouts out because I love movies, and I just I need more.
A movie person.
But James, I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to talk to a real live Bigfoot investigator, somebody who is continuing to investigate, right? We'll have to have him come back on after when he gets back from his next gig. We'll have to have him come back. Maybe talk about chapter 2 once you've seen it. You guys can talk about it because chapter 2 sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I am excited. And you know what's cool, Cal? Before we started, the journey of our podcast, I always wanted to talk to someone and all this. But, because we're doing this, now I'm having the opportunity to talk to these people.
Well, like I said, he's going out there by himself in the woods, scaring himself, but, determined to take a photograph. I appreciate him because I'm not doing it. So,
I give him kudos, yeah. Kudos.
And he wants Bigfoot to be real, and I think a lot of people do. And if you're not a Bigfoot believer, that's okay too, right? I mean, that's okay.
No, that's okay, but I've always said, I want us to at least spark a little interest so people say, well, God, really? Well, I'm going to go see. And then maybe it starts their journey down the paranormal path.
Well, maybe they will go watch his documentary and go watch, number 2, because he said he's got this channel, and the other stuff,
Remember, I told you.
Tying Bigfoot to the paranormal, tying Bigfoot to, the paranormal and channeling and all that type of stuff. So, James, I Bigfoot is not my thing. That's your thing. But I find it interesting how I never knew that Bigfoot was tied to the paranormal or being an alien or, vortexes, walking through vortexes at Skinwalker Ranch or whatever the case may be. I just figured Bigfoot was this animal out in the forest, whatever. I never knew there was all these layers to Bigfoot. And there are layers to Bigfoot.
He's like an onion.
He's like an onion. At any rate, my friend, it's always a pleasure. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
Hey, you did lizard people.
Hey, when we can find somebody who's an expert on lizard people, expert on the reptilians and all that, then yeah, let's have a conversation. You're absolutely right. But I don't think anybody's out there hunting for lizard people.
Well, God, because it's the queen, man. Too much security.
Yeah, I'm sure. Anyway, you can get us on social media. You can hit us up. You can hit us up on our website, that'somecrazyshitpodcast.com. There you'll find all of our social media links for Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and you can also look at all the past episodes of That's Some Crazy Shit as well. James, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Next week, another fabulous guest. But until then,
keep your minds open, people.